Here on Mirror Now, you're watching the Urban Debate and I'm Heena Gambhir. 8 months after he was arrested, superstar Shah Rukh Khan's son Aryan Khan has been given a clean chit by Narcotics Control Bureau today in the drugs on cruise case. Along with Aryan Khan, 5 others have been cleared as well. The NCB says there wasn't enough evidence. In fact, 14 out of 20 who were arrested in the case have been named as accused in 6,000-page charge sheet that has been filed by the Narcotics Control Bureau. Aryan Khan's arrest on October 2nd last year had created a sensation in the country. He was under constant scrutiny. He spent 28 days in jail for a crime that now turns out the central agency can't prove. NCB chief S.N. Pradhan has admitted there were loopholes in the investigation. The agency did not find clinching evidence, and the only reason the SIT took up this case is because their credibility was at stake. Listen in.
इस रूटीन केस को हम लोगों ने इन्वेस्टिगेशन एसआईटी लेवल पर इसलिए लाया क्योंकि कुछ कमियां रह गई थी जो स्थानीय इन्वेस्टिगेशन हुआ था उसमें, और उसके आधार पर एनसीबी के क्रेडिबिलिटी का सवाल था, तो इसलिए हम लोगों ने उसको जांच किया। और जांच करने के उपरांत हम लोगों ने पाया कि 20 में से 14 लोगों पर सफिशिएंट फिजिकल और अन्य एविडेंस पाए गए और 6 लोगों पर एविडेंस नहीं पाया गया। मैं स्पष्ट कहना चाहता हूं, पब्लिकली कहना चाहता हूं कि जो एसआईटी का इन्वेस्टिगेशन हुआ है उस पर पूरी स्क्रूटनी होगी, जुडिशियल स्क्रूटनी भी होगी।
Now, here's what the SIT has found during the course of its investigation. The investigating officer seemed motivated to somehow build a case against Aryan Khan. No drugs were found with Aryan Khan. He voluntarily handed over his mobile phone. The investigating officer checked Aryan's phone without following legal procedure. Not just this, the entire investigation against Aryan Khan was on the basis of his WhatsApp chats, something that the Supreme Court has time and again questioned. Courts have said many a times in the past that WhatsApp chats cannot be used as primary evidence. Now, the man who led this probe, Sameer Wankhede, has a lot to answer. Sources tell Mirror Now that the investigation against this shoddy probe will intensify, and all those directly or indirectly responsible for implicating innocent people in this case will be held accountable. We also tried to get an answer from Sameer Wankhede, the man in the eye of the storm himself. Here's what he said.
गुड आफ्टरनून सर, प्रियांक बोल रहा हूँ टाइम्स से।
कौन प्रियांक? कहाँ
सर
से?
टाइम्स से प्रियांक।
हाँ बोलो प्रियांक।
Sir, this is an update. The NCB has given clean chit to Aryan Khan, and you will.
That is between the NCB and the accused. I am no more in NCB.
But sir,
काफी दिन हो गए मुझे छोड़ के NCB.
but you arrested him, and the probe was initially done by you.
नहीं
the
मैं
operation.
कहाँ?
जी सर।
क्या
Sir-
कमेंट अभी 5 महीने के बाद तुम मुझे पूछ रहे हो यार?
Joining me on the broadcast are my colleagues who've been tracking this story very, very closely. We have Bhavtosh as well as Abhishek joining us live on the broadcast. Good evening to both of you. Bhavtosh, to you first. What happens next now in this case? I believe the investigation against Sameer Wankhede is going to now intensify. So trouble clearly brewing for Sameer Wankhede and other officers who were involved in the preliminary probe in this matter.
Yes, Hina, in fact, what sources within NCB and in the government has said is that appropriate action will be taken by his parent Kader because of the manner in which he has investigated this case, in the shoddy manner in which he has investigated this entire case. But more importantly, if we just go by the charge sheet that we have accessed, in fact, some important aspects of the case which we have accessed and which we have managed to know is that sources have said that when Aryan Khan did not give the password of his iPhone, what the independent witness Kiran Gosavi did was that he took the face ID of Aryan Khan. Now, this is of the viral selfie we are talking about. And if we can just pull out that viral selfie photograph and can show it to our viewers, that viral selfie was actually taking the face ID of Aryan Khan and then accessing his iPhone. Now, this is a very big criminal act that was committed by Kiran Gosavi, who initially was called an NCB official and then NCB NCB denied this, and then they said that he's an independent witness. He was later arrested by the Pune police. He is now presently in the judicial custody, and just a week back, NCB vigilance team recorded his statement. Now, what sources in the government are saying is that both NCB and government is very peeved at the fact that none of the rules were followed when this drug bust was happened on the cruise liner last October. In fact, the WhatsApp chats were leaked just before the Bombay High Court hearing was to take place, and no one else could have done this except the investigating officers, then investigating officers of Aryan Khan case. More importantly, Hina, the medical test of Aryan Khan was not done, though he was arrested in a drug case. Dubious witnesses were taken on the raids. Their antecedents are already under the scanner. Harassment of Aryan Khan friends like Ananya Pandey, she was served as someone, and some kind of searches were carried out at her place, her father's place. Adding to this, wrongfully additional sections were added of NDPS only to make sure that Aryan Khan is behind bars.
All right, Bhavtosh, requesting you to stay on with us. Let me go across to Abhishek as well. Abhishek, have we got any reaction from Aryan Khan or his family on what has happened today in this particular case? Aryan Khan finally getting a clean chit.
As of now, there is definitely no reaction from family directly, but at the same time, the lawyers, we had Mukul Rohatgi and Satish Manashinde, who was representing Aryan Khan, and he gave out a press statement and he clearly said that Satyameva Jayate, and it clearly shows how shoddy behavior was done by the NCB zonal unit in Mumbai, and this kind of investigation clearly exposes the NCB at the Mumbai level. So definitely at this given point of time, there is no direct statement from the family, but all the people are speaking about this case because how it was handled. And at the end, NCB coming out and the chief of NCB coming out and telling that because of this case, the entire NCB reputation was at its stake. That's the reason we have to remove Mr. Wankhede and give it to the SIT. And at the end, he also clarified that we couldn't ascertain any evidence into it, and the entire international racket claim was dropped because they couldn't get an evidence to the WhatsApp chat which was being claimed by NCB throughout whenever they wanted to seek the remand. So definitely at the given point of time, there is no statement yet directly from the family. But at the same time, political statements are out, and the colleagues of Shah Rukh Khan have come out and spoken about it, and the legal team has given out a statement and had say that Satyamev Jayate and truth has prevailed now. But this has raised definitely big question on the credibility of the NCB investigation in Mumbai. And what we are hearing from the sources, even Bhavtosh has clearly said that action will be initiated in near future against Mr. Samir Wankhede is what is expected. Back to you.
All right. Abhishek as well as Bhavtosh, appreciate both of you for joining us and bringing us up to speed with the latest in this particular case. And the big question we are asking tonight is, did the 23-year-old Aryan Khan pay the price for being a superstar son? And what does this case really tell us about the credibility of an agency like Narcotics Control Bureau and the investigation that it carried out in this particular matter? Joining us on Urban Debate this evening is V.V. Kumar, former head Narcotics Control Bureau, Dilip Cherian, founder Perfect Relations, Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate, live with us, Ujjwal Nikam, Indian Special Public Prosecutor, Desh Nigam, who's a lawyer, also with us on the broadcast. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Mr. B.V. Kumar, let me begin the discussion with you. You're former head Narcotics Control Bureau. So,
yes,
while opposing Aryan Khan's bail plea, the Narcotics Control Bureau cited alleged international syndicate, and in the charge sheet, there is no sufficient evidence. He has been given a clean chit. What really explains this sort of a U-turn by the Narcotics Control Bureau?
I must say the NCB has been very fair in its investigation. They come out with the facts very clearly and honestly, and one needs courage to admit the mistakes committed during the first stage of investigation, which was very shoddy, which was not done in accordance with the principles of investigation. So I must applaud NCB for coming with the correct facts of the case and, uh, not including in the charge sheet the persons who were not involved, particularly Aryan Khan, and 4 persons who were involved in the event management, and also another 2-3 persons. So that way the investigation has been very fair, and the investigation report is about 6,000 pages, and they have sought the further time of another few months so that they can carry further investigation. The court has permitted that. So we have to appreciate an investigation agency if they have come out with a fair investigation report. So to that extent, NCB has to be applauded. And if somebody has done something wrong during the initial stage of investigation, they paid the price for it. They have been removed in time, and a separate SIT was formed to investigate this case. So to that extent, we have to appreciate the NCB. But one thing I must say, in future at least, the NCB should not commit themselves with this type of ordinary cases, which should be left to the street policemen. It is the job of the street police or the concerned jurisdictional police station to conduct this type of small cases. NCB was constituted basically to investigate international smuggling syndicates causing damage to Indian citizens, either for importing drugs into India, which will cause a lot of damage to us, or exporting or passing through India to other countries. See, that is the main job. And also their job also involves, their charter also involves demand reduction, which is a very important area of activity of the NCB.
Right. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, NCB's response, I mean, I'm just looking at the timeline of the case here, and NCB's response has changed with the change in investigating officer. Because I remember when this case was going on in October, in November last year, the way the bail plea was again and again being opposed, one thing was being said, that NCB suspect that he is a part of some sort of an international drug racket. So justice is dependent on individuals. What should be the takeaway from what we have got today? Who is to be blamed here? One officer only? A group of officers? Or the entire agency?
I must first compliment Mr. Kumar for being a very good lawyer. He didn't answer the question that you asked him. He praised the agency instead for finally filing a charge sheet which kept out Aryan Khan. Come on, Mr. Kumar. This is where the agency lent itself to specific politicking, to publicity seeking, and possibly worse. Now, to say that, we did not file a case in the end against Aryan Khan after arresting him, after having a nationwide tamasha, reminds me of that old Kannada proverb which says that even if you fell down in the mud, your mustache did not get muddied. That kind of splitting hairs will not work. The NCB launched a full-scale persecution. It has failed to make out a case. It is left with egg on its face. And at the very least, a public apology is owed not to Aryan Khan, but to the nation at large. You are right. The NCB has to not get into small matters. It should get into big matters. We would like to know what has happened to the 3,000 kgs of heroin, which was seized at the Mundra Port Trust. We don't hear too much about the NCB investigations there. Are they fair? Are they unfair? So, well, Aryan Khan is done and dusted. I don't think he will come after you. But the credibility of the agency has taken such a serious hit that in a lot of cases, the defense will cite what has happened here.
Very interesting. Mr. Ujjwal Nikam, is it not raising questions over NCB's credibility as an investigating agency? Because, let me repeat myself, when Aryan Khan was arrested on 2nd of October, NCB was trying to convince the entire country that he is a part of some sort of alleged international drug syndicate, and that's the reason why he can't be allowed bail. So Today, the SIT's findings suggest the IO, the investigating officer, seemed motivated to somehow implicate Aryan Khan. Seemed IO wanted to build a case and implicate, the accused on the basis of WhatsApp chats. My question to you is, who should we question here? NCB as an agency or just one IO? Who is responsible for what has happened with one person who has been given a clean chit today?
Before answering to your question, I'm really amused to see all the developments which had happened in the conscious thought to the statement of the DG of NCB, Mr. Pradhan. He has made 3 facts. He spelled out 3 facts. First fact, he said that further investigation is still on. Secondly, he has said the 5 persons, 6 persons against whom they have not charge sheeted, there is no evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt. That is his wording. And thirdly, what he has said, that initially certain mistakes have been committed and we have examined all those mistakes and we don't find any other corroborative evidence to the WhatsApp chat. My basic question is how NCB authorities can act like a judge in the matter. See, initially the FIR has been lodged against the Aryan Khan and the others. According to some prima facie evidence, we had to make a distinction. Mr. Sanjay Agade will agree with me that while looking at for framing of the charge, only material required is the prima facie evidence. It is not necessary that one should say that whether a particular act of the offender is proved beyond reasonable doubt or not. That is the court's promise. But here the NCB has acted like a judge. NCB has formulated SIT. They have discharged the role of the investigator. They have done the role of the prosecutor, saying and commenting upon the evidence. And thirdly, they have given the acquittals over it. But saying so, at present, NCB has not made a very clear statement saying that we don't have any prima facie material against the 6th person whose name have been appearing in the charge sheet. Why they have not made mention? They said that our further investigation is going on. Now, WhatsApp chat is a prima facie evidence. And according to the investigator, the initial investigator, they said that Aryan Khan was connecting with the international mafia rank. In short, their allegation was of the criminal conspiracy is one of the parties to the criminal conspiracy. It is very seldom to have the direct evidence on the criminal conspiracy. One has to rely upon the various circumstances, acts and the omission. And what NCB, that particular SIT has investigated from that angle, we don't know. So at present, I would say that though NCP has taken a bold stand saying that we don't have any evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt. Of course, that is beyond their purview and beyond the scope. I am sorry that NCB has acted very hastily. NCB, in fact, ought to have produced all the material. And it is for the court to take the call on the particular evidence. But NCB here has taken the entire assessment, entire call in the matter and giving clean sheet to some persons. See, I don't want to comment upon that clean sheet to any one person, but I am really fed up with the manner in which the NCB has acted.
Okay. And Mr. Deshratan Nigam, now the question is, the findings of SIT are very, very crucial here. IO seemed motivated to somehow implicate Aryan Khan. Is this how an agency functions? My colleague Bhavtosh was just now giving us some more details that the selfie with Kiran Gosavi that actually went viral was taken to open the phone of Aryan Khan. Is that how this agency functions? What does this case, what has happened in last 8 months and specifically today, say about the investigations being done by Narcotics Control Bureau?
Well, Heena, before answering your question, let me put things in perspective. One, the real facts of the case could not come out, nor have come out because if you recall, no video recording of the raid has been done. The way the WhatsApp was accessed, because it's legally not permissible, no medical test done, so you don't know whether a person consumed or not. And the punch witnesses, which are there, and they are of doubtful nature, which ultimately the courts will decide, and similar charges on all the persons, whether the drug was found with them or not. Now, it is not for the agency to give a clean sheet. And I agree with Mr. Nikam that it is for the court to decide. even when the agency is saying that they have given a clean sheet and they don't have prima facie evidence, it is for the court to look at that evidence and they can still frame charges. They can still frame charges against the person. One. Second, they can further order investigation against the same person also. These are the possibilities available to the court. So to say that they have given a clean sheet, I do not agree with it. One. And secondly, let me tell you.
Okay.
This washed up investigation which has happened through one of the officers against whom inquiry is also pending. Once the investigation is botched up, it is shoddy. How can the evidence be unearthed? That is the whole issue. So in my opinion, the real facts have still not come out. They are within the purview of being doubtful, which is there. The conduct is also doubtful. It is for the court to see, because I have not seen the evidence, entire evidence on record. It is for the courts to give the clean sheet. That is the whole submission.
Okay, interesting. So two guests on the panel right now are of the view that we shouldn't really see it as, this case being over now. I know Mr. Sanjay Hegde wants to respond, but sir, 1 second, let me take the opening comments from Mr. Dileep Cheran as well, then I'll come back to you. Mr. Dileep Cheran, how will you like to react to what has happened today in this particular case? Do you also see it as some sort of self-goal by Narcotics Control Bureau? Do you agree with what the opposition is saying, that all this was done to take away the attention from another case, another big drugs case from Mundra?
Heena, since the lawyers have already weighed in on all the nitty-gritty of what the charge sheet includes, what it should not include, the nature of the prosecution, etc., let me look at it from a different perspective. One, this was clearly a case where there was effort to tarnish the image of a young boy. Who is going to pay any restitution for the fact that you put a boy of 23 away for almost a month without any proof coming out later? Two, when an agency like the NCB creates a kind of atmosphere to try and point out to international conspiracies, the whole country now knows what it was trying to do. It was trying to justify the fact that they were going after grams and milligrams of drugs, which is not their job to do. As Mr. Kumar said correctly, this is for the beat constable to worry about, and the NCB should get out of it totally. That is the third thing. The fourth thing I'd like to say is that we are all talking here and making it seem as if it's a legal matter, but even look at the way the legal process was handled, and you had very big named prosecutors being brought in. So there was clearly an effort by certain, shall I say, organizations, structures, to try and create a sort of whirlwind of suspicion, of anxiety in the country, to say that, star kids are involved in this, etc. So I think that, if you ask me, the image that has got tarnished is that of the fear of the due process of law not being upheld, becoming higher and higher in the country. And the second, that an institution like the NCB, who has a clear charter, being seen as being subverted for minor, micro matters, which is not its job. So what does that leave us with? It leaves us with the suspicion who was trying to do what in this case. And the image that we have is that there's a dark cloud hanging over the entire matter, which is not a good place for any country to be in.
Okay. Mr. Sanjay Hegde, playing devil's advocate here, if the effort was to tarnish the reputation of a young man, why would the IO do that? What would be the motivation in your opinion? Because I'm just looking at the SIT findings. IO seemed motivated to somehow implicate Aryan Khan. Why would he build a fake case in your opinion?
You should ask some of those independent witnesses that he dragged in, the figures that were being mentioned as to what could be requested from from the Khan family so as to let the man go? Please, there are enough motives. Let me not spell it out. Let me not make the agency look even worse. First thing I'd like to say is a fish rots from the head. And if the head of the agency behaved that way in Bombay, and there is a history of it happening even earlier, then it is high time that the agency takes not only action, but decisive action. No pussyfooting around. Otherwise, this agency's credibility is greatly damaged, if not irreparably damaged. Now, the second point I'd like to say is that the rule of law depends not only on a fair investigation, but also on a fair prosecution. Now, if the investigating agency at the end of the day is being fair and say, yes, against these people we have evidence, against these people we have no evidence, I don't think either Mr. Nigam or Mr. Deshratan are right when they say that the investigating agency has done the court's job. Time and again, we have seen that people are named in the FIR, and thereafter, after investigation itself, the investigating agency says, yes, we can file a charge sheet against some, against the others, there is no evidence. And therefore, we are not even filing a charge sheet against them. Yes, the powers of the courts are not limited. If they think that the investigating agency has done a shoddy job and let somebody off deliberately, they can always join them back in. But this is a case where, let's remind ourselves, there was no recovery from this boy. Secondly, he was arrested even before he got on the ship. Thirdly, the arrest was in a manner which was, let's put it delicately, unknown to normal narcotics law. Quite frankly, if his legal team were to go after the NCB and the officers, they would probably have a case in damages, but that would be 20 years down the line when everybody is long forgotten things. This is a case which should wake up India. Forget Aryan Khan. Aryan Khan had access to a lot of good lawyers.
Case.
Just 1 minute. He had access to a lot of good lawyers. And at the end of the day, after 26 days, he finally got out of bail. There are many who cannot afford the kind of lawyering nor will get that kind of hearing from the courts. It is quite time for the investigating agency, especially the NCB, to look at cases where small amounts were involved, see to it how much time people have spent as under trials, and take a call, at least insofar as not opposing their bails are concerned. Please do not leave this as just,
I think you've hit the nail on the head. This should definitely serve as a wake-up call. Mr. B.V. Kumar. Yes, Mr. Deshratan, 1 second. Let me take a quick reaction from Mr. B.V. Kumar as well. He wanted to respond. What kind of action can be initiated in this particular case, considering the fact that the DG NCB himself has acknowledged that there were loopholes in investigation? The investigation was shoddy.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, when the initial stage of investigation itself, the investigation was very shoddy, proper investigation was not done, the ship was not searched, the event where it was to take place, that area was not searched, some of the ship crew were not questioned, and so many other loopholes were there right at the beginning, I mentioned in the earlier debates. I have great respect for Mr. Sanjay Hegde. I've been hearing him on various channels. He is always fair in his comments. But one thing I would like to mention, if he agrees with me, that in this case, at least the NCB had the courage to admit their mistakes and rectify and come out with proper investigation, and only charge sheet those persons against whom they had some iota of evidence. And they have taken further time to file further charge sheet if and when they find further evidence. But the fact remains that the entire agency cannot be blamed, because earlier in the past they have done tremendous amount of major cases. In my time, we had made multiple kilos of cases. The largest case in the world, 730 kilograms of heroin, along with 4.5 tons of hashish were seized at the Maharashtra-Gujarat border. Like that, many such cases have been done. But simply because one bad egg, as rightly pointed out, will not damage damage the entire organization, and probably it will be correct if that particular officer or the group of officers who did the shoddy investigation, they are charge sheeted and probably awarded the punishment they deserve for ruining the reputation of the organization. I'm more concerned with the reputation of the organization rather than this individual case. And Mr. Sanjay Hegde has also said the court the investigating agency always have the right to drop the charge sheet against a particular person if evidence is not found during a fair investigation. To that extent, I differ with Mr. Ujjwal Nigam, who is a well-known and well-reputed public prosecutor. But to that extent, the investigating agencies have a right to evaluate the evidence if they are doing a fair investigation, to drop the charge sheet against a particular individual against whom there's no evidence. As rightly pointed out again by Mr. Hegde, the court always can intervene at a later stage and tell, look, you are deliberately left a couple of people in the charge sheet and you have to again investigate and charge sheet them. So that's how I would like to place the whole thing on record.
Okay, Mr. Deshratan Nigam, your response.
Yes. You know, when we talk of these loopholes, no videography done, no medical test done, and so many other loopholes, whom does these things benefit? Not the agency, but the accused. Simple. It does not require a rocket science. So therefore, these loopholes which have been
by that logic, was the investigating officer actually trying to help Aryan Khan?
That's a matter of investigation
if
and
he was
inquiry.
not working, in the interest of Narcotics Control Bureau, then by what you are saying, by that logic, was he trying to help Aryan Khan from, the moment he saw Aryan Khan in that case?
See, the fact is, prima facie, if such loopholes are left in investigation, which is a normal investigation in such kind of cases, then a suspicion arises. And this requires deep investigation and inquiry. That is what I can say at this stage.
Okay. Mr. Ujjwal Nigam, now, of course, as you were mentioning earlier, the investigation is still, happening in this case. Further investigation is still going on. The questions today are being also raised about the trauma this young boy had to go through because of the way NCB initially tried to build this particular case, that he is part of some international racket on the basis of only WhatsApp chats. What happens to, thousands of others who are languishing in the jail, as Mr. Hegde also correctly mentioned, Aryan Khan probably had the best legal team available to him who could first help him, secure bail and eventually, in a way, get a clean chit in this particular case, at least in the first phase, first charge sheet that has been filed. But what about the many who probably could be languishing, who do not have the resources that Aryan Khan had? Should this not be like a wake-up call for the entire agency? And if there are investigating officers who are not doing the job properly, not in the interest of the agency, should be punished?
I do agree that this is a wake-up call for our country. But at the same time, I must tell you that the whole our debate is proceeding on the line that the investigator who has done the entire investigation with certain ulterior motive. See, the SIT was constituted on the backdrop of there were serious allegations about the shabby or shadow investigation. But we don't know what SIT has observed. Whether SIT has come out with this case, that what SIT has said, that there are serious lapses in the investigation, omission, commission of certain facts. But whether there was any ulterior motive, now it is very settled law that if investigator commits some mistake, negligence, inaction, then without any ulterior motive, then definitely that won't affect the credibility of the witnesses. See, to get the evidence is a different thing. Whether that boy was connected with international gang or not, whether there was sufficient evidence or not, that is altogether issue is different. But certainly there was a prima facie evidence about the WhatsApp chat. Now, SIT arrived at a conclusion that WhatsApp chat can be altered, can be manufactured, can be fabricated. See, whether SIT has investigated this aspect, where from that chat had come, who had sent that chat, we don't know. And therefore, what SIT ought to have done SIT ought to have collected the entire material, whatever they have investigated, and they would have placed before the court. And then it is for the court to take a proper call and to punish the delinquent officer who have committed such mistakes. Now, this is your anxiety is absolutely right. When this has happened in such a famous case, how one can give the guarantee why it should not be happen in the other ordinary cases? It is quite possible, and therefore the judge has to appreciate the whole material collected by the investigating agency. I may remind you that during the Al Qaeda one suspect in Mumbai that approach, he has given the confession saying that I am an Al Qaeda terrorist. I have taken the flight training in Washington, New York. Our police officer had gone. The POTA charge was invoked, and he was prosecuted. When I found out that he has been booked under the POTA Act, and then all alleged acts were prior to the enactment of POTA, and the POTA had no retrospective effect. Therefore, I taken a bold stand in the court and said that POTA cannot be made applicable. So I withdrawn that. So public prosecutor has every right to appreciate. But what is my objection only? That how that SIT has taken the entire call. SIT ought to have produced the material, and it is for the court to whether the SIT is going to punish that delinquent officer who have committed deliberate mistakes. This is a moot question.
Absolutely. Mr. Dilip Cherian, it's not the first time we have seen somebody from Bollywood, getting this sort of limelight because of a case like this, and eventually nothing coming out. There have been several such instances in the past as well. Do you think probably people from Bollywood are easy targets? What could be the motivation? Because, I'm not able to understand what SIT has found. SIT's findings suggest IO seemed motivated to implicate Aryan Khan. I mean, as Mr. Deshratan Nigam was also mentioning that, IOs are supposed to work in the interest of the agency. So was it just that one person had this much of power in Narcotics Control Bureau that he could do something like this? I mean, it was a high-profile case. He must have definitely thought of something before getting into it. What did he think that, he can, probably create a fake case? Or do you think something somewhere is amiss?
That's a very good question, Heena. And essentially what we are saying here, and I think what I've heard around the discussions here are the following 2 points. One, that sometimes a rogue investigating officer, it is still to be proven whether he was rogue or not, and I acknowledge that, but a rogue investigating officer can run an operation which is directed at either creating a lot of noise and publicity around a particular thing. And this can happen also only and if only his bosses are also complicit in this or willing to keep their eyes off it. So that's the first thing. The second thing we have to keep in mind is that Bollywood is unfortunately the soft underbelly for attack on almost anything. So if they're chewing, tobacco in an ad, that becomes an issue. If they're seen in a particular airport getting a special privilege, that becomes an issue. Bollywood is an easy, soft target. Most of the time, most people in Bollywood don't want to go and sue or establish that they were doing only what they are entitled to do or they were unaware of the problem or whatever it is. So Bollywood has a sense of entitlement. Bollywood children may have a sense of entitlement, but attacking them gives you eyeballs. And therefore, anyone who's looking for visibility or, shall I say, immediate attention finds this an easy, soft target to attack. So, these are the two key points we have to keep in mind. Aryan Khan got caught in this crossfire between an investigating officer who made clearly too many lapses and the fact that the industry his father is in, and he is not part of the industry as yet, is something which can be attacked with impunity because most of them want to stay out of trouble and want to keep on doing their professional work. So this is the net result. But I think the big question that almost everybody has brought on record is that if this can happen to an Aryan Khan who has access to the best legal brains in this country, think of all those who are falsely implicated, whose cases don't come into the public limelight, but who for one reason or the other have got caught in the jal that a particular officer may weave or a particular agency may choose to chase at that point in time for whatever agenda it has.
I think you've said it correctly. Of course, this should really be an eye-opener. Mr. Sanjay Hegde also wants to respond, sir. I'm completely out of time. 10 seconds to you. Closing comments, since you raised your hand.
Closing line from Akbar Allahabadi. सिर्फ एक ही उल्लू काफी है गुलिस्तान बर्बाद करने के लिए. The rest of I will not say on public.
And that ullu has to be punished.
Well, you've summed it up. Well, absolutely. Whoever is responsible has to be punished, and this definitely should serve as a wake-up call for the entire country, for this important agency like Narcotics Control Bureau as well. I'd like to thank all my guests for joining us here on Urban Debate this evening. Thank you very much for your time today. With this, we will slip into a very, very short break. But